Hello, everyone, and welcome back to McFly's Movie House. As per usual, I'm your host, Marta McFly, and today's episode, we are covering a lot. I think probably the most that we've covered to date. We're going to be talking about the incredibly influential sci-fi classic by the German filmmaker Werner Fassbinder, and that's 1973's World on a Wire. This also happens to have an enormous runtime of 212 minutes. We'll get into why. But before we do all of that, I want to introduce my guest for the day. It's actually someone who put World on a Wire on my map last year. And then since I've watched it, I've just been obsessed with it. So let's welcome Jonathan Cessa to the pod. He's a Chicago-based comedian. He also happens to run his own delicious bagel business, and he watches some great movies. So how are you, my friend?
True. I'm great. I did just finish rolling out. I sell bagels out of my apartment for the listeners who are like, what are you talking about? I did just roll a giant batch of dough before this, and I'm like very sweaty. So
we love it. We love it. Your bagels are delicious. I see them on Instagram, like on my stories all the time. And I think I've messaged you in the past, like, can you mail me them to Canada? They're so good.
I feel like by the time they get through customs and stuff, it just like would not be, but you'll just have to make the trip. I am planning a West Coast trip at some point this year.
Ooh.
So maybe you could swing down to the States. We'll figure it out.
I would love to, for the bagels. Exactly.
Yeah, I'll make them in my friend's apartment. I'm sure she'll be psyched.
Well, I'm excited to chat to you about World on a Wire today. But before we do that, I ask my guests always to highlight what they've been watching lately and what they suggest for me and for listeners to check out.
I mean, I have been watching Northern Exposure for the first time, which is a show from the 90s. Not a movie, but I've just been like so deep into it, and I was going to recommend it to you anyway, so might as well recommend it to the millions listening, because I feel like if you're listening to this, you'll probably enjoy it. It's, I would say, like if nobody died in Twin Peaks, and like it's about a Jewish doctor from New York City, much like myself, who gets placed to work in rural Alaska, and very begrudgingly. So it's like a fish out of water thing in this small Alaskan town, and just about the slice of life, day to day of these Alaskan town folk who are all like incredibly charming. And it's just like a very pure and wholesome show where like it could not be made in any capacity today, because it's just like so devoid of any irony. It's like, my friend described it as like every episode would be like a winner at Sundance, because it's all just like very small stories. It's almost more like reading like a short story collection. It's just very small slice of life stuff. But then there's all these like film and pop culture references. There's this one character who's like an aspiring filmmaker, so it's relevant. I also just watched Birth by Jonathan Glazer, and that heater.
Yeah, is that the short or no?
No,
which one am I thinking of?
That's I think that's like
you know
the
which
fall,
one I mean,
right?
right? Yes, the fall.
Yeah, dude in the thing. Yeah. No, Birth.
Super weird.
While I drink seltzer out of a mason jar. Excuse me.
Birth was the one I think with Nicole Kidman, right?
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah,
that's a fun. Have you seen it?
No, it keeps popping up on Criterion, and I'm like, I gotta do this.
You gotta. It's so just, it's very hard to describe, like tone wise. It's so strange. I loved it so much. It's definitely like very fucked. But,
what is it by him? I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
Far from the course.
Yeah. Are you familiar with his music video work?
No. Should I be?
Oh my God. Oh yeah. I mean, he did like the Virtual Insanity Jamiroquai video.
Stop.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, the dude who
I love
did
that music video.
made Zone of Interest.
Wow. I just saw Zone of Interest, by the way, a few nights ago, and I loved it. I mean, I felt sick to my stomach afterwards. I just kind of sat there in silence. But I thought it was incredible. The ending kind of reminded me, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, although by the time this episode airs, I'm sure everybody will have seen it. But the ending reminded me of Killers of the Flower
30
Moon.
minutes if you're
30 minutes. Killers of the Flower Moon. That's what it reminded me of with the ending.
for sure how it kind of zooms out to I see that.
So I loved it. Did you like it?
I loved it. Yeah. I mean, obviously, like, not a movie I'll be like throwing on very much in my life. But yeah, I saw it, and he did like a little virtual Q&A after that. Like, I saw it at like an Alamo, and they were like doing it at all the Alamos at the same time. And he seemed super jet lagged.
Yeah, I mean, probably.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, he said he was super jet lagged, but he was also just
he
like,
literally did. I thought
he was like, I'm super jet lagged, and then would just like start talking and be like, sorry, I forgot what I was talking about. But shout out to Jonathan
I need to
Glazer.
see more of his stuff. I still need to watch Sexy Beast as well. That's been on my list.
Sexy Beast rocks. I mean, dude is what is it, 4 for 4, I guess, 3 for 3.
Yeah. Under the Skin was good as well.
I love it.
But actually, that's a perfect segue because that's sci-fi, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're chatting about sci-fi today. So boom,
sure.
Well done. So I guess let me just break down what we're talking about today. Where do we even start? I don't know. But with movie-specific episodes, usually we'll do a breakdown scene by scene. Because this is almost 4 hours long, we're not doing that today. I thought we would, and then I kind of started taking notes, and I'm like, maybe not.
Yeah.
So my attack plan is to, I guess, give listeners a brief overview, first of all, of who Fassbinder was, his background, then chat about the film itself, some of the movies that inspired it, what it inspired. I don't know if you noticed my Matrix shirt.
Oh, wow. There we go.
Yeah,
okay.
It's fitting.
Yeah.
So we'll obviously get into that.
I figured
the Matrix,
we'd talk
not my
about the
shirt.
Matrix. So
yeah.
Great.
And then just some meatier concepts found within the film, tie it back together. How does that sound?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Well, World on a Wire. So this is Fassbinder's only sci-fi movie. It's an adaptation of a pulp sci-fi novel, 1964's Simulacron 3 by Daniel F. Galouye. Have you read it? I have not.
I have not. Yeah.
No, I want to.
Yeah.
But the novel actually happens to be one of the earliest examples of a story that deals with virtual reality. And so World on a Wire wasn't even a movie when it was released. I should mention that as well. It was a 2-part TV production shown in Germany, or Western German television specifically, over the course of 2 nights. And then suddenly, after that, it was just lost for decades. 40 years later, it was restored, re-released. You told me about it. You were like, hey, it's on Criterion. And that's how we all saw it, I guess.
Sure did. That's how everyone saw it.
And I just love that it's getting the recognition that it deserves finally, because it really is just like,
it's so great.
Good.
I can't imagine like turning on TV and tuning into that. That's
right,
just
especially
so
at the time.
Yeah.
So I guess this just all begs the question, and another good segue: what is it about? So let's try to do this as easily as we can. World on a Wire takes place in the distant future or near future. It revolves around a corporation. It's called the Institute of Cybernetics and Future Science. They have a supercomputer called the Simulacron. This Simulacron has a home for its 9,000 identity units. That's what they're called. And these units live in a world like human beings, unaware that their world consists of computer code, or basically, I guess, literally a world on a wire. And then the whole idea of the Simulacron is that it's designed by the government to predict future trends within society, what can be sold better, and so on and so forth. One day, the technical engineer of the program, Professor Volmer, unearths this crazy discovery. But before he has time to tell anybody, he dies suddenly. Nobody knows how. And then a cybernetics engineer, who happens to be our lead, Fred Stiller, takes over for Volmer, or he's kind of forced into it, I should say. And he just keeps getting increasingly paranoid. And I guess, spoiler alert, he starts to think and realize that his own world may be a simulation. Shocking. Have I missed anything? Anything you want to add?
I feel like that's pretty much it. Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
That is World on a Wire.
Yeah, it's been great.
There you go. Thank you. So incredibly influential, as we said. I think cinematically, it's probably one of the first depictions of simulated reality. Many folks would point to The Matrix, like we said,
Sure.
But this predates that. It predates, I mean, what other movies? You could say Tron, Blade Runner, Videodrome, Existence, even Westworld,
I just rewatched Videodrome.
Did you like it? I mean,
it's the best.
Videodrome.
It's the best. I mean, it just has some of the best images in all of horror, I think.
I rewatched Existence. Or no, it wasn't a rewatch. It was a first-time watch for me, and I thought it was okay.
I liked it.
Have you seen it?
I liked it.
You liked it? Yeah. It was good.
It's
it was
fun.
Okay.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's
not
not
one of
like
those. It's not World on a Wire.
Lower tier Cronenberg. but
exactly. I would say the same.
yeah.
But before we get into more of this concept of virtual
Mhm.
reality in the movie itself, let's chat about Fassbinder. How familiar are you with his work?
I would say not very, because
Not
I
very.
mean, he also just has so
So
much stuff.
much. I know.
And the fact that he did it all within like
20 years.
of yeah, insane. I mean,
It's insane. It's
dude
crazy.
loved
So that's
cocaine, and it's a
that's what
testament
got
to
him.
his work ethic. You know,
Yeah.
it's
You
I so I've
go
like
ahead.
seen a few of his films. I would
Uh-huh.
not call myself an expert in any means.
Fair.
Yeah,
I would not be an expert either, but I've seen, I believe, four now. And I've loved them all. So I know enough.
yeah,
But
sure.
basically he was born in 1945 and he died at the age of 37, like you said, cocaine, that's what got him. Yet during that short career, so it was between 1967 and 1982, he completed over 40 feature films, 24 plays, two TV shows, three short films, and four video productions.
Ridiculous.
Like, how? World on a
I
Wire is almost 4 hours long. And then he did Berlin Alexanderplatz, which is
yeah,
931 minutes.
yeah. That I
So,
just don't get it. And also, that was a TV show, right?
yeah.
Same
I
deal.
mean,
Yeah,
931
crazy,
minutes. I would hope
insane.
it's a TV show.
Yeah,
I think it's also worthwhile noting that he did other roles as well on set. Like he was a cinematographer for some of his movies. He worked as a producer sometimes. He actually had a pseudonym. I don't know if you know that. Franz Walsh is what he used when he decided to co-edit some of his movies. And he used the same cast and crew in his movies. And that's kind of what developed or what allowed him to make these movies so quickly was just this familiarity with who he was working with,
yeah.
right? And he would complete, I read this, as many as 4 to 5 films a year, usually on low budgets. And then the government would just keep giving him grants for more movies. They're
Yeah.
like, you know what, you're doing a great job, so here's more. I think it's also important to mention that he was a major player in the new German cinema movement. Do you know much about that or no?
You
A
know,
little here and there.
yeah,
Wim Wenders, et
yeah.
cetera. Herzog,
Vim and Herzog are like, the
the big
two
ones.
that I'm like very familiar with, but
Same,
yeah,
but there's a lot more. But so the new German cinema movement that started in the early 1960s, lasted until the early 1980s, and much like other waves, I guess let's call them of the time, it consisted of filmmakers working on low budgets. It was also influenced by both the French New Wave, and we'll touch on that later on,
sure,
but also Italian neorealism, which I guess isn't really relevant for today, but
right,
anyway, the whole point is that the movement was made to create a cinema that had artistic value. And that's what they championed, not big budgets, not focusing on what would be commercially successful. None of that mattered to them. And so, what sets apart Fassbinder actually from his new German cinema contemporaries is before he got into the movie business, he actually came from a theater background in Munich, where he worked as an actor, director, I think writer as well. Whereas the other filmmakers that were part of that movement, they just started off with movies. And that actually kind of reminded me of Mario Bava from Italy, who just had an eye of how to like
sure,
lay out his scenes, right?
yeah.
I didn't think of that association until like the other night. It came to me and I'm like, oh my God,
I
they
didn't
both.
realize that was his background, but that makes a lot of sense.
Right, totally.
Yeah,
Because even with World on a Wire, which we're going to chat about, like every scene just looks like a painting almost. It's
yeah.
stunning.
I mean, yeah, we'll get into the framing and
The nitty
everything
gritty.
for World on
Oh,
Wire,
yeah.
which
Oh, yeah.
is just like so incredible.
hmm
Yeah,
I know.
every shot
And
is just like, oh,
lit to
and
perfection.
all the
Uh,
decor is just like,
yes.
oh,
It's like that 70s retro futurism that I'm
yeah.
just
Everything
like,
is
I
like
just.
very in right now.
hmm
Yeah, all the
I
like
was gonna say, yeah,
oval
it's all in
lamps
right
and
now.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
If I had unlimited funds, I would probably want my apartment to look like the interior of World on a Wire,
Oh yeah,
maybe.
big time, big time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for supporting this. But back to Fassbinders. So interesting
Mm.
man, actually very interesting man. He was notoriously difficult to work with, almost deliberately crafted this image of being like an unlikable man. And this came from his own feelings of just like rejection. He was a bisexual man who was left leaning and willing to tackle just these difficult subjects. He was open to having his films revolve around alienation, class exploitation, even racial tension, which you see, I guess, most prominently in Ali, Fear Eats the
Ali, yeah,
Soul. Such a good movie.
so
And then he
good.
also explored his own sexuality within these movies as well. So these films, I think it's interesting. although they came from such a difficult man, they were just so compassionate and about outsiders. So I find that interesting. Do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, if it's, I mean, from the sounds of it, it sounds like it's a little bit of a put on. So, the presentationally of like, oh, I'm going to be this difficult dude. Most people are not. I think to be a successful filmmaker, you can't be like not tender inside,
It's true. It's true. I even found out, what was it recently about Wes Anderson? I think something leaked of him like yelling at his crew on set. And I was like, oh my God, I always thought he was such a gentleman. But I mean, who knows? Maybe they just caught him in a moment of weakness.
Sat next to Wes Anderson at a restaurant once. It was at like a communal table. And it was, it must have been in like high school at the time. It was at like a ramen place downtown New York. And I remember when we were like getting seated at the table, I was like, is that Wes Anderson? And they were like, yeah, do you not want to sit there? And I was like, no, I guess I do. And the whole time it was like him and two other people. And the whole time he was talking about how much he loved Get Him to the Greek.
Stop.
The whole time, that's all he talked about is how much he loved Get Him to the Greek. And then like when they got up, I was like, sir, your movies mean a lot to me. He was like, oh, thanks, man. Like very, very not. But he was also wearing like, an immaculate
what you would expect.
Tweed suit. Yeah. Exactly.
That's so funny, huh?
Yeah.
I never would have thought he would have been into Get Him to the Greek, but
yeah, right.
The more you know. So I just lost my train of thought. That took me out. But World on a Wire. We got this. So yes, I want to chat about, first of all, I get so excited about this. I love this. The concept of the simulation hypothesis. It dawned on me during this rewatch, maybe because I'm a bit slow, but I didn't pick up on it the first watch. The entire premise of World on a Wire can be seen as a riff on Plato's allegory of the cave. What do you think?
Sure. I mean, they reference it at one point.
They do, but very
part, right? Yeah.
Discreetly. I didn't notice. Like I said, I didn't notice it the first time around. But it's or maybe we're thinking of different things. Mine is the stage show with the shadows. Is that what you're thinking of?
I feel like they directly reference, like name check Plato at one point, don't they?
What? Maybe.
Yeah, I'm like
maybe I missed it.
90% sure.
Oh
they
man.
do. I mean. Yeah.
I'm going to have to check this after the episode, but the one that I picked up.
Fairly certain.
Yeah? Oh man. Yeah, okay. I'm going to look into that after. Sorry everybody. But the one I'm thinking about is the stage show. So there's background, or I guess, how do I explain this? Stage show, and then we see the Nazi army marching, but we only see their shadows. We don't see them. And that to me is just a direct reference to the cave, not being able to see anything else besides the shadows. Those shadows then become reality. Right. And then that just basically challenges our perception of what's real and circles back to Fred Steller's dilemma of wondering if his world is in fact reality or virtual reality. What do you think? Is that too big of a stretch?
I don't think so at all. I think it's pretty deliberate. I mean, I think anytime you're dealing with like the concept of what is real and unreal, it's hard not to touch on those things. You know, I mean, that was the first to do it, right?
The OG.
Where are you at with that in terms of, is this all a simulation or not? Have you decided
about this? What are you talking? The movie or real life? Because I have thoughts about both. Well, I'll leave my thoughts for the end. I'll say that much. Okay. What about you?
I don't think so.
Could go both ways.
I don't buy it, but
fair enough.
Yeah. In the movie, obviously, but
yes, in real life, I have days sometimes where I'm like, yes, absolutely, this is all. None of this is real.
Sure.
But yeah, we can get into that later. But yes,
okay.
So Plato, the OG. Definitely. But this whole, pragmatic nature of knowing what's real and what isn't, it was done after Plato. It's just been done throughout history so many times.
Sure.
After Plato, we had the Scottish philosopher, David Hume, around 1770. He argued that causality plays a role in what our notions of reality are. And even more so than him and Plato, I think it's important to touch on the idea of the simulacra itself, which was expanded by the French philosopher Jean Baudrillard. Sure. Do you know a bit about that?
I do, yeah. I went to Sarah Lawrence College, so
you know it all.
Unfortunately.
Simulacra, or simulacrum, as it's called in World on a Wire, is Latin for likeliness. And it's essentially an imitation of a thing or a person. And Baudrillard argued, albeit after World on a Wire came out, but I still think it's important to mention that the simulacra isn't a copy of the real, but it's his own thing, the hyperreal. And so this appears often in sci-fi in the form of artificial life forms, AI. But I think it's worthwhile mentioning because Baudrillard is just so synonymous with simulation. And so to tie that all back to World on a Wire, the film itself doesn't focus on action, much like The Matrix does, but more so these philosophical ideas that revolve around the human mind, the role of scientific research,
Yeah,
the
it's a
whole
very chatty
concept.
film.
Exactly. And the whole
Yeah.
concept of the simulation itself. And we can go crazy just even if you like focusing on that movie without getting lost in it is impossible because you're right. It's
Yeah.
so chatty. It's crazy. Let me give you a quote from Fassbinder himself, and then I want to hear your thoughts about all of this babbling because I've gone on
Okay.
long enough. Quote, there's a very beautiful story named World on a Wire. It talks about a world where you can create projections of people with a computer. And this brings about the question to what degree we are all merely projections. Because according to this thought model, the projections are equal to reality. Maybe another, larger body has created us with a thought model. We are looking at an old philosophical model that produces a certain horror. With this movie, I have attempted to work as perfectly and orderly as possible using all available technical means. What do you make of this?
Yeah, something I've been thinking about is like in relation to this and like rereading stuff about like, simulacra and Plato's cave and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
It's like every generation assumes that they invented like so much like, oh, social media, we are the first people experiencing like this
Mm-hmm.
idea of like the self and then the projected self on the internet, but like people have been pondering this forever.
Yeah.
So it is like, I'm watching this and just thinking like, God, this is so prescient, but also like,
Mm-hmm.
I guess this is just one of those things that is like always been a bit of a part of human nature of like, well,
Mm-hmm.
what is this,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what do you
Yeah,
think?
that's why. I mean, I agree with you. That's why I thought it was so important to touch on all these other people that have done it
Yeah.
before, because when you bring up this entire concept, people are like the Matrix, and then
Yeah.
that's it. But it's like no, like you got to start digging and thinking a bit outside the box
Yeah.
and relating these concepts of simulacra to these philosophers, right, that have done it so long ago. Yeah, I mean, and then as you said, it just also starts making me think about our reality and what we're living in, but that's more so an episode for another day because I'm sure
Sure.
we have a lot to say there. So on first watch, I'm sure people won't catch on to all of this. I certainly didn't, but it's a movie that really does benefit from breaking it down, as we said, and really thinking about all the choices that Fassbinder made. I'm just going to spoil things here. I think if we're this far into the episode,
Yeah.
if you don't know, then
You should
sorry.
watch the movie before you listen to this,
Exactly.
probably.
All almost 4 hours. But
It's
basically,
good.
what it's I would hope so. I mean,
Yeah.
I forced you to rewatch it, so
Oh, I love it.
good. I mean, of course
Yeah.
you do. You showed it to me. But basically, what our lead, Fred Stiller, ends up discovering throughout this entire conspiracy is that he himself is in a simulation. Duh. So in the movie, we get three worlds that we're dealing with essentially. We get the real world, right? And then we get the simulation where Stiller lives that we think is the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And then within that, we get another simulation that people from the second world think is the only simulation. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
In a very wraparound way. So everything Fassbinder does just furthers this sense of paranoia throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm.
He offers up so many hints throughout that what we're watching is a simulation. It's incredibly voyeuristic.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add here to this?
No, I was about to say that like everything is shot in a way where it's like
Yes.
every frame is like a little obstructed or like
Yes.
everything's shot in a way where you're constantly observing. You're not
Yep.
like, it's never just like straight on two shot type of thing. It's
Totally.
like you're looking into these people conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to piggyback off of that, I'm actually going to grab my copy of World on a Wire here.
Whoa.
For those of you on YouTube who can see. But the reason why I'm showing this to people is for the poster itself. It's the Criterion poster. I'm geeking out, first of all. This is so cleverly done. But here you see the title. It says World on a Wire. Yet above every letter, we see these lines that extend like wires, right, from a computer. And then from there, we get these two circles that are overlapping in different colors, and they form sort of an eye, right?
Right.
Signifying that sort of surveillance and voyeurism, right? Like right there. And then in the center of this I guess we see a man, Fred Stiller, running. And you could even argue, because he's in the middle of these two circles, that he's stuck between two worlds. Or I guess even technically three, right?
Right.
Since the two circles formed the little baby circle in the middle. Did you pick up on this?
I didn't. I mean, I noticed it looked like an eye. I didn't realize that was Fred Stiller in the middle. But
Yeah, I mean, I would assume it is. I
yeah,
just guessed that. I mean, who else would it be? Or it
that's
could be
true.
Volmer. Could be Volmer.
Right.
But I now want to get into some really fantastic examples of Fassbinder offering up clues that Stiller's in a simulation. I'll list some that I noticed, then you can give me some of yours if there are other ones. I'm very excited for this. I feel like I unearthed so much during this rewatch. I like exited my little cave of a home 2 days later, just barely breathing. So did you notice that there are multiple scenes where Fred Stiller should be sitting or standing, but he isn't? Like just
Uh,
still, like not in motion.
no, I didn't.
So get this. Oh, I get so jazzed about this. I love this.
Yeah,
So
please.
yeah. Oh, it's great. So example, when he has that meeting with Siskins, his boss, and the
Uh-huh.
CEO of United Steel, so both of them, we see Stiller walking in a circle in Siskins' office
Oh,
for no
goes around
reason.
the office. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
weird. And
Yeah.
then even more
He's like spinning
prominently,
in the chair.
yes,
Yeah.
that's the next scene that I was going to mention too. They both sit down in their chairs. They're having a meeting, or they're supposed to have a
Uh-huh.
normal meeting, and then they're just spinning in their chairs, both of them,
Yeah. I loved
without
it.
stopping. I didn't realize that the first time around, and then the second time I was watching it, I was like, well, nobody has meetings like this. Like, you don't go to your boss's office and you both just spin your chairs together.
Although
That's
that'd be very cute.
would be very cute. But so to me, this just reminds me of the concept that they're computer programs made out of wires or circuits or
Hmm.
what have you that are always in motion.
Hmm.
Boom. What do you think?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exciting. And then Fassbinder also does something very clever. And this was obviously something I learned after the fact,
Hmm.
because how could I know? But World on a Wire actually utilized a lot of old stars. So famous German screen stars, stage stars, fading
Mm.
stars, what have you, to signify that they were people from another era, or that they resembled
Right.
other people, aka they're not real, right? So this was actually super unique to a German TV production at the time, just to see so many icons popping up randomly in like minor roles as well. And this loses effect to most of us today, I guess, unless you're like a German
Right.
silent movie expert.
But it also
But
adds
it's
to the sense of like, I know these people. These people are
yes,
familiar to me. I must be in something. I must,
that's exactly it. That's
the
exactly
the,
it.
the
And
meta. Yeah.
yes. And then he also includes those club scenes as well that feature performers
So
lip
cool.
syncing to other stars' songs, which only adds further to that subtext of people living lives that aren't their own, right? Is there anything else that you spotted that would be kind of fit that sort of train of thought?
No, but the clubs and the parties just look so cool.
I
Ugh,
know.
just like I couldn't get over some of those, like that party where Volmer disappears. Just like,
Mhm.
I don't know that I'd want to hang out there, but I also kind of like want to live
I,
there. You know what I
I
mean?
kind of do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Oh, so to go back to the whole concept of hinting that everything is a fake world, this also appears in the locations that we see. I don't know how obvious it is. I guess, yeah, after you've watched it a few times, it starts to get obvious. But there's instances where we can spot unfinished streets and housing. And this signifies errors in the code or the simulation itself, like glitches, let's call them.
Sure.
And this goes back to Baudrillard's concept of operationality, where people or streets, anything can be programmed or added or deleted. I think at some points we even hear characters say about removing people, they say they'll delete them, which kind of sounded weird from a movie in the 70s, don't you think?
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
using that term. And coming up with the locations was a super clever play by Fassbinder and the cinematographer Michael Ballhaus, who looked for these modernist settings in Paris where they were shooting. And I was watching a supplemental doc on the Criterion channel where Ballhaus even mentioned that they lucked out because there was just so much construction going on in Paris. And also those malls that we see, those futuristic like shopping centers, those were new at the time and they didn't exist in Germany. So, as you said at the start, can you imagine just casually watching this on German TV and being like, what
Yeah.
is
I
this?
mean, that scene in the second half where he's like, it was right after he's accused of murder and is like running away, and is then in that mall with that little kid, and he's just like kind of hunched over, like that. The idea that that's just like a place is so wild to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And the fact that it was, again, I guess it's just a location. It wasn't, no sets were built. That was just a mall in Paris in the 70s. Like, I wish malls looked like that still. I would probably spend time in malls if so. But I don't. So there you go.
Instead, they're all dying. Yeah.
They're all awful.
Yeah.
But so I mentioned the cinematographer briefly. I want to circle back to him. So this was shot by Michael Ballhaus. For those of you who are unfamiliar with his work, he worked with Fassbinder on 9 projects, I believe. But then he also did, when I looked at his filmography of what he's done, my jaw was on the floor. He did Goodfellas, The
Oh,
Departed,
wow.
After Hours, Coppola's Dracula. He was the cinematographer for all of those movies.
That's wild.
Crazy. I know. Another powerhouse, much like Fassbinder.
Yeah. Wow.
I know.
Is he still alive?
I'm unsure. I think so. I could be wrong.
Crazy
maybe.
career.
But yeah, crazy
Oh my
career.
God.
I know, let that sink in for a second, because when I saw Goodfellas as well, I was like, how did I miss this? But yeah, so total powerhouse. He shot World on a Wire on 16 millimeter film. And the stuff that he did, I know you kind of touched on it earlier, but it's all just so remarkably dreamlike. Like the production design, as we said, it's that 70s futurism. And the film uses a lot of these long tracking shots and dollies, some of which are barely even an inch off the floor. There's that one in that restaurant, I think it is. You know which one I mean, right?
Oh, when they're just like cracking their feet.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's stunning, and it just makes it all so unsettling. Even in the film's opening shots, which are out of focus and kind of wobbly, I discovered that Ballhaus used a long lens for this shot, which he didn't need to use because I think it wasn't even that far away. It's that car that drives in. I don't know if you remember, but it was a 250 millimeter lens. And then on top of that, he added a Bunsen burner under the camera and lit that to create that like bubbly or swirling sensation.
Oh, wow.
So super cool, right? Because it's out of focus.
Movie magic.
Again, that just goes back to Fassbinder's visual clues that he offers up. Like the fact that the world is unstable or wobbly, because again, it's just not real. So just the way everything is shot is just also immaculately timed, all those tracking shots, the way characters enter and exit a frame. Anything you want to add here to that?
No, I mean, I talked earlier about the obstruction and how everything is so, there's just a constant sense of eeriness that is like
surveillance.
truly unmatched. It's so good.
Totally. Yeah. So I guess let's briefly get into some inspirations for World on a Wire and what influenced Fassbinder himself. So let's get the big one out of the way, the obvious one. There's obviously nods to Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Before coming on this, I was thinking like of pretending I had never heard of 2001.
Can you imagine putting me on the spot? I'd be floundering right now.
I just feel like the people watching this would have been like, what?
All credibility lost. Just go back to your bagels.
Say, what is that?
So 2001, for those of you who don't know, came out in 1968. I don't know how much of this you noticed, but I feel like some of the gadgets and visuals we see really reminded me of 2001.
Totally.
Not to mention, you hear the Blue Danube Waltz playing at one point, or multiple points even. Did you pick up on that?
I did not catch that.
I love the Blue Danube Waltz is a good one.
Yeah, it feels like so much of this movie exists in the room where they're like keeping him. At the end of 2001.
Blue room? Oh, yeah. Totally.
Just aesthetically so similar. I feel
absolutely. Like. Yeah. But then alongside Kubrick, totally different, I think the even bigger source of inspiration is Godard's Alphaville.
I was wondering if you were going to talk about it. Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I've seen it, but not in a
while.
Yeah.
I saw it last, I think maybe 2 years ago, so my memory is a bit foggy, but stylistically it makes sense. that he would be
Totally.
inspired by Alphaville. Like we said, that's why I mentioned the French New Wave movement earlier.
Yeah.
Fassbinder was a huge fan, also a fan of Godard himself. And World on a Wire unfolds in a very restrained pace. Like you said, it's a very chatty movie. It also uses similar landscapes architecturally to showcase this sort of near future, much like Alphaville. But the most direct nod in the entire film is the cameo by Eddie Constantine, who's the lead in Alphaville. He plays the man allergic to cigarettes in World on a Wire.
Okay.
Do you remember? Yeah. So that's literally Eddie Constantine.
Never would have caught that, but
yeah, my mind was blown.
Go off.
But so, thank you. Alphaville was essentially Godard's film noir, which is apparent in World on a Wire too. I think we can see those noir influences for sure. Totally. Fred Stiller, the lead, he takes your role of like a quintessential noir fall guy, let's call him, but also his wardrobe too.
I mean, it's not a detective story.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure in the second part, he starts wearing like a fedora and he's smoking all the time. I was smoking and fedoras to me. I'm like Humphrey Bogart, noir movies. And also the recurring motif of femme fatales as well. You could even throw that in there.
Totally.
Yeah. So we got noir, we got Alphaville, we got 2001. Oh, but also the biggest source of inspiration for Fassbinder, not even just this movie, but so many of his other films. Did you know he was a massive Douglas Sirk fan?
I did not.
Like, huge fan. Massive fan. You wouldn't even believe. So for those of you who don't know, Sirk was a German filmmaker, but he was famous in Hollywood, specifically in the 1950s for his melodramas. And Fassbinder loved those melodramas passionately. Yeah, I guess so. Notably, Sirk's film All That Heaven Allows from 1955 was used as a basis of, or homage to Ali, Fear Eats the Soul. Some people say it's a remake. I wouldn't. I would say it's an homage. What do you think?
I have not seen it.
Oh, All That Heaven Allows? Definitely do. It's
put it on the list.
Pretty much very, very similar. But so why do I bring up Sirk? It's for another reason as well. Sirk once said that a mirror is an imitation of life. And for him, those mirrors function as reflections for the emotions of our characters. And there's one scene in All That Heaven Allows, which you gotta see. It sees our lead, a widowed housewife, Carrie, presented a TV set for Christmas from her son. And Carrie just said goodbye to the man that she loves. He was her gardener / landscaper. He was much younger than her. And everybody around her, society, her children, her friends, they don't want her to be with him. So she's devastated. And her son gives her this TV. The man who sells the TV places it down in her living room. And he tells her something like, all you have to do is turn the dial and you've got all the company you want. Life's parade at your fingertips. Doesn't that make you think of World on a Wire a little bit?
Yeah,
it does for me.
Totally.
Exactly. So
all we need is TV. It's so
exactly.
True.
It's the solution
Even
to
then.
everything.
Yeah.
Even then. So the reason I bring that up is because with World on a Wire, this is obvious even on first viewing, I think, but the characters are constantly reflected through mirrors and glass surfaces. Right. I think you even mentioned that at the start of the episode.
Yeah.
And to me, that signifies that sort of voyeuristic lens that looks like people are looking at all of this through a simulation, right? And this happens so often that it's obvious. There's one example where Stiller's assistant, his first assistant, she presses her hands against the glass of, I think it's her office. And it looks like she's trying to escape like a television screen, kind of like Videodrome, actually.
Sure.
Right? And so often we see characters talking to each other, but not directly. It's like through fragments of them through mirrors or reflections.
Yeah.
Even at the start of the film, I can't remember what he says exactly, but Professor Vollmer is talking to a government official and he takes out his pocket mirror. And he probes this official about questions regarding reality and what's real and what isn't. It's kind of a passing remark, but once you tie it all back in together, you're like, holy shit, this was made obvious within like 2 minutes of the movie. Are there any other standout examples of those mirrors and reflections that you want to know?
Oh, yeah. There's this beautiful part in the second part where there's like a conversation where like someone's holding 3 mirrors and Fred Stille's just in the middle one. And that just,
it's beautiful.
What more do you want, you know?
I love that you're going for Stiller, and I'm just saying Stiller.
I've just been saying it to myself a ton. Fred Stiller. It's just a fun.
It's fantastic.
One. Are you familiar with the Brian Eno album No Pussyfooting?
No. But I am a
because
Brian Eno fan. What?
it's an album he made with Robert Fripp, and the cover,
Uh-huh.
it came out the same year as World on a Wire. Because I was looking
Okay.
up before we chatted, I was like, it has to be a reference. The cover is like that computer room that they're in with all the mirrors.
What's
It's
the
like
album called
almost
again?
exactly No Pussyfooting.
Okay.
It is. I don't know if you want to in post put that in. It is exactly that room. It's like wild. Yeah.
Okay. We
Yeah.
will try and put that in post. I'm also just going to look this up after the episode
Yeah.
because
Great
I
album.
need to know.
Yeah.
Okay, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy you brought that up. And yeah, so what else I think is really cool is that Fassbinder takes these mirrors that we're discussing, these Circean mirrors, let's call them, to another level. He makes them more
Mm-hmm.
complex. And he starts playing around not with just mirrors, but with screens as well. We get these early versions that make me chuckle of, I guess, like webcams or even FaceTime, where all the government officials have those little cameras in their offices, right? It's
Sure.
literally like early version FaceTime or MSN, I
Yeah.
guess. But again, this is in the early 70s, right? So the usage of all of these monitors really does further that concept of artificial reality, not to mention the entire motif of paranoia and surveillance that
Yeah.
we keep talking about.
I mean,
Um,
it's almost like wholesome the way they imagine it. Where it's like, I mean, nobody could really imagine how it would just be like in all of our lives
everywhere,
all the time,
all the
everywhere.
time. Do
So
you have your laptop webcam with the camera blocked? I know a lot of people do that. I
no,
don't.
I don't. I mean, I think honestly, any like attempt at escape is like kind of goofy. Like
Not happening.
I mean, if it's not your computer, it's your phone,
Mhm.
it's your TV. Like
Mhm.
you're just there's no avoiding it.
No.
It's yeah.
The
Do
concept
you?
sucks.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I mean, I agree with you at this point. Like, people can see what I'm doing in one way or another, like you said, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
probably weird, and it is what it is, and that's that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's nothing we can do. And at one point in the movie,
Awesome.
actually, to tie it back
Sick.
to the
Sick.
movie, we hear Stiller say, just back to that concept of voyeurism, he says, "We're alive, but they're like people dancing on TV for us," which is just terrifying to think about, to have
Yeah.
somebody else even watching us and we're dancing on screen for them. But I'm not going to get into my anxieties about that. So to me, just to wrap this back to what we were saying before, because we keep going on these tangents, which I love, by the way, World on a Wire. So it carries those influences from Kubrick, sure.
Mm.
Even more so Godard, while sprinkling the wonderful Cirque in there as well. Are there any other references or influences that you would add on top of those three big ones?
I mean, I have to assume he read like Philip K. Dick and stuff. You know, I'm currently reading Ubik by Dick, which is I'm not super duper far in, but it's
Uh-huh.
also a book about losing your sense of reality. And
You're just going
there's
all in with these concepts everywhere.
it's completely coincidental, which is, a sign it's all a simulation. But the pages I read last night, I read like a couple pages before bed, but I was like too tired to like dig in. They do also reference Plato in that
Oh,
too.
it
So I was
always
like,
goes back
"Oh,
to
baby,
Plato.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Everything
it's
always goes back to Plato in his damn
yeah,
cave.
yeah."
What a concept. Well, I guess lastly for me, I'm trying to think what else we could say, just because we talked about so many highbrow concepts. But what I noticed through this rewatch is that the film is also strangely funny. Did you? Or
At
no?
times, yeah. There was this one scene that made me laugh where
I wonder which one.
Fred Stiller is talking to, I think he's like, imagine your friend. You have a friend, right? And the guy's like, of course. Like very upset.
Yes, yes, yes. No, I know the
But
exact scene.
yeah.
That's a good one. No, I think he also and this is such a trademark of Fassbinder too. Characters will always speak in a detached way in his movies. Everything just
Mhm.
seems kind of off and stiff. And then you get the character of Stiller himself, Stiller. I should start doing that now, even though we're like almost on the episode. But some of the
Never
things
too
that he
late.
does here, the physical comedy of it all that appears in some scenes, the actor who plays Stiller, Klaus Lawich, I butchered that. He had to get in some intense physical shape for this role. And there's one scene that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's an unbroken shot. And I discovered that it was just done in one take, which is mind boggling to me. But it's the one where he bolts down that super steep staircase outside. He proceeds to run across a fucking highway. And then he keeps running towards a fence, which he climbs over, gets to the other side, pauses, and then almost goes back and climbs it again. Or that other scene where he like preemptively dives out of his cabin before it explodes. Like these things are just so bizarre that you can't help but laugh because they're played off as so serious, like that talking scene you mentioned too. Yet you're watching it and you're like, none of this is normal. Like none of this is normal at all. And of course it's not normal because it's a goddamn simulation. So are there any other moments that I guess tickled you in that way?
No, I don't remember being tickled a ton.
No, maybe that's just me. Maybe I was just losing my mind.
No, you're right. I I also like didn't really. He is running like a great deal of this movie.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. When he said he had to get in shape, I was like, is he doing that much? I was like, oh yeah, no, he is. He's running a ton. Yeah.
And when he's not running, I guess he's just like spinning or walking around in circles.
Yeah.
Super weird. So all this to say, this entire episode that we just did, I just truly think that World on a Wire is such an influential piece of sci-fi cinema. Totally. I think we owe a lot of what we watched today to it. And I think more people should check it out and enjoy it. Anything you want to add for parting thoughts?
Well, I'm curious if it was an influence on like The Matrix, considering it was so hard to find.
So no, I don't think so. And the only reason why I say no is because I spent hours trying to find a single interview or article that says that World on a Wire inspired The Matrix, and I couldn't find a single thing. But it's weird to me because they're so similar. Like it just it doesn't make sense that they wouldn't have been inspired by it. But you're right, The Matrix came out, the first one, when? In
97 or 8,
somewhere there. Yeah. So I mean, like you said, if World on a Wire, like we both said, was lost for so many decades, then probably not. Probably just coincidence.
I mean, the book, but you know, I have no idea how similar the book is.
Neither do I.
I would say
go ahead.
Djordjevic is for sure, like, I know is like an influential book and it deals with like similar topics. So I wonder if that was on their minds as well. Because I know I started reading it because Coppola. Do you follow Coppola on Instagram?
No.
Coppola's great. Coppola's in his like posting era right now.
Oh, him. I thought you meant Sophia for some reason, but no. Francis Ford is chilling on Instagram.
Oh yeah, Francis Ford's like posting a ton.
I love this.
And he posted like calling out Michel Gondry for not like Michel Gondry's dream movie apparently was to make an adaptation of Djordjevic, and he like called him out like he should do it. What? I was like, oh, that sounds cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I hope something comes out of that. We shall see.
Right?
But I mean, like we said,
it's very similar to like Eternal Sunshine.
Okay.
Also, I mean, a sense of like,
these concepts are always going to be played around with.
Yeah, totally.
Like we said, they've been played around with since Plato's cave, since Hume in the 1700s. Like these are just things that are going to be in our society all the time. And I would love if someone remade.
And worse.
Yes, unfortunately. I would also love if someone just remade World on a Wire. I think that would be really cool.
There's another movie based on the same book that I am curious about. Yeah.
What's it called?
From the 90s. I don't. But I do want to see it.
Yeah. It would be cool to see this one redone as well, especially with all those visuals and all those mirrors that are used. But I have no idea who I would tap to direct that.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, like a Christopher Nolan, I think would probably make it too big.
Yeah. I was going to say Lanthimos.
Oh, totally.
He could make it weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He hasn't done like a pure sci-fi movie.
You could count, I mean, I guess like maybe The Lobster.
Kind of.
Ish,
like
not really, but that's the only one that I thought of.
They're playing The Lobster at a Valentine's Day party I went to last week.
I love that's fitting.
Just in the background, yeah.
I
guess Poor Things is like not sci-fi.
A sci-fi, yeah, or it could be like a steampunky, thing. But anyways,
I guess it's its own little
And
but that's a great call. Yeah,
thank you. We're petitioning for Lanthimos to do World on a Wire. It seems.
Yeah, if he's watching.
I hope
if you're watching and you need another
idea.
comedian a la Rami Malek. No, not Rami Youssef and Gerard. You know,
Holler.
I'm a great choice.
Well, let's leave it on that note then. Warm wishes to Lanthimos.
Yeah.
But sadly, that's all we have time for today anyway. So thank you for coming
Thank
on.
you.
Seriously, so grateful.
A
And it
treat.
was a meaty topic, and I think we did it justice. So I would hope that we did.
Yeah. A lot
Did
more, I'm
you
sure.
want to shout out your socials at all, or where people
Yeah,
can find
follow me
you?
on everything at Jonathan_Cessa. If you live in Chicago, come see me do comedy. I'm doing stuff all the time. You know? Yeah.
There
Thanks
you
for
go.
having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on and hanging out at McFly's movie house.
My
I will
pleasure.
talk to you soon. See ya.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.